All right. All right, anyone else can just catch up, I think, because we've got quite a few people already. So just want to say hello and welcome back to everyone who has been attending all the sessions. And it's really good to see so many people. I know we've got a few extras tonight who haven't been before, so welcome to you guys as well. Now tonight we've got Jayme from the SES who's presenting for us. So I will chuck straight over to him now and let him introduce himself and let him tell you about his role in SES and go from there. Thanks guys. Thank you, Jayme. And I'll stop sharing my screen here too. Sorry, hold on. Won't let me. Cool. All right, good to go.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Kate. And thanks, folks, for popping along to tonight's session. So, as already mentioned, I'm Jayme Moreland from the State Emergency Service, or SES as we're commonly known. My role is quite diverse. So, I'm the Chief Remote Pilot. So, I've set up and managed our RPA program for using drones right across the state for search and rescue, mapping, and damage assessments, amongst other things. But my main role is within the training team. So I'm a capability coordinator and I look after a number of little skill sets, looking after everything from developing the capabilities, purchasing the equipment, looking at new techniques and developing the curriculum. So my background is with different RTOs, mainly dealing with WHS and training and assessment courses, amongst a few others along those lines. Now, in addition to that role, I've also got a very casual second job as a test pilot for a 4-meter flying racing car. And I also study paramedicine in my spare time. So get a little bit of a range of different skills in the mix there. Now, with my presentation tonight, so we'll start off by having a look at very briefly what the SES does, which then leads into SES as an RTO. And we'll be having a look at 2 topics for tonight, which will be having those hard conversations and incorporating training scenarios into assessments and the benefits that we have with using training scenarios. So throughout this presentation tonight, we'll be stopping and asking questions, but if you've got any burning questions as you go along, please feel free to shout out. So we'll dive straight into having a look at some of the SES capabilities, and this will give you an idea of the range of courses that we develop and look after. So you've probably seen us in the news quite a bit for our most common work that we do, which is looking after storm and flood and tree damage. So there's a little bit of a misconception with the SES that we put out fire, whereas we actually do everything else. But we support the CFS and the MFS with their fire tasks. So lots of storm, flood and trees that like to lay down on people's homes. So in addition to that, we do virtually anything and everything rescue-wise. If you think of a context or think of an environment, we really take care of that as well, in addition to confined space and restricted space rescues. We also conduct large animal rescue and also the small animals. So when we get calls for a bird up a tree that needs rescuing or a cat up a tree that needs rescuing, then we also attend to those jobs as well. We conduct a lot of land search, so assisting police to look for missing people or to look for evidence following a crime as such. And we use a range of tools. So we've got our search dog teams across the state. We've got our remotely piloted aircraft capability, and we also have air search observers. So people who hop into small planes and fly over the sea or over land, looking for people, looking for vehicles, or looking for vessels that have overturned. And we've also got our marine rescue capability as well. So again, searching and rescuing people from overturned vessels or broken down vessels. We also do vertical rescue, so cave, cliff, mine, or steep angle rescue. So here we see a bit of a flying fox set up to get from one side to the other with a patient in a litter. And we also conduct abseiling or lowering down the sides of anything we can climb. Predominantly in the country areas, lots of road crash rescue, chopping people out of crashed cars essentially. We've also got our swiftwater rescue technician capability. So we've got 2 levels. One is land-based, where if someone is swept away by swift water, so fast-moving water, we can throw bags to them or use some other techniques to rescue those people from the water. The technicians are trained to actually jump into that fast-flowing water, grab the person and use a variety of techniques, or survive until we can get a safe exit out of the water, which also comes down to being able to rescue people from vehicles that are trapped in water. So here we're using the current and our rope setup is a bit of a flying fox system. Get to the vehicle, grab the person and get them to dry land, which then comes into our technicians also being able to go down the wire to get into some of the areas where we can't necessarily access via the road. We also conduct a lot of shoring. So here we've got a timber construction set up to prevent the walls of the structure from collapsing in. And we also attend a lot of jobs where people mistake the accelerator and the brake and end up driving through people's homes, which happens quite frequently. So here's a before and here's an after to at least make it safe and secure until the builder can come out the next day and conduct the repairs if possible to the house. Now, in addition to that, we also are responsible for urban search and rescue in conjunction with the MFS, the Metropolitan Fire Service. So if you think of a September 11 style building collapse, we're trained to rescue the people on top of the surface as well as tunneling in underneath to get to people. To oversee all of that, we've got incident management. A lot of people trained up to be able to control the incident, being able to direct people and resources to where they're needed most. And that also ties into our ability to help the CFS and the MFS with the base camp and staging capability. So whenever there's a big bushfire, obviously we want firefighters fighting it. So we use SES volunteers to be able to set up accommodation is what you see in front of you here, which in turn becomes this big base camp facility. So this is where all the firefighters and SES volunteers sleep while they're trying to manage the bushfires or any other emergency that comes through. So there's a lot that our volunteers undertake. So there's obviously a lot of training there. And what I've shown you is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to a lot of the capabilities and the skill sets that we have. So for SES as an organisation, as an RTO, we've got 1,600 volunteers. We've got 3 qualifications at the moment, which is your Cert 2 and Cert 3 in Public Safety SES, as well as a Certificate 4 in Leadership. So amongst that is 40 units of competency that are fairly well standalone, that once you complete those units of competency, they lead up to the qualifications. So with a lot of our courses, they'll have 1 or 2 units of competency attached to them. We also run a lot of non-accredited courses, everything from induction to some of the specialised courses as well are non-accredited. So we hold our formal courses, so the courses that are held typically on weekends that might be at a regional or a district level. So lots of volunteers from individual units coming together to do the training and undertake the assessments. And then we've also got regular skills maintenance. So at the unit where I volunteer, every Wednesday, 3 hours, get together, run through some training, skills maintenance scenarios. And we've got 4 training roles at the moment, 4 volunteers who aspire to be trainers and assessors. So starting off the base level or the starting point is our instructors. So typically they'll help at the unit level and then they'll move on to other roles such as your trainer. So that's the trainer presenting skill set. And then we have our trainers assessor under supervision. So that's the trainer assessor complete skill set. And then we've got our trainer assessor, which is the full Cert 4. So we've got our pathway there for people who do aspire to train and assess others. Needless to say, there's a lot of training and assessment that's conducted within SES. So giving you that little bit of an overview as to the capabilities that we have, as well as the training roles that we perform and a little bit of the RTO side of it. Does anyone have any questions from the get-go?
Taking silence as a no.
Easy done. That's right. We'll plenty of chances to chat as we go through. So skipping into our first topic for tonight. So the hard conversations. Now, trainers, assessors, we all love to deliver training. It's the best part about it is just seeing those people develop as they get those skills, build up their confidence, and go off and conquer the world with their newfound knowledge. That's the fun part. The hard part comes in, what if they don't quite make it? What if they're not yet competent? It's the one area that trainers seem to dread a little bit, is having that conversation with a person. Now, again, every organization is different. So tonight I'll be showing you a little bit of how we do it in the SES. So for us, the conversations don't need to be hard. So they can be easy if we set those clear expectations and those benchmarks early. So giving them the information, letting them know what's required, giving them time to prepare, and asking, are they ready? Now, it's a little bit hard in this day and age where people want courses delivered in a day. We're all volunteers. Time is precious. So we don't want to be spending 5 or 6 weeks doing a course. We want to try and get things done as short, sharp, and shiny as possible. But in order to do that, we still need to make sure that everyone's aware of what's required, rather than condensing it and skipping over the important parts, such as letting them know what the assessment requirements are. So the learner does need to know that they have other opportunities to complete the course if they're deemed not yet competent. I think one of the biggest challenges is people have this focus that the course is the be all and end all. If you don't pass the course, then that's it. That's you done and dusted. Don't show your face ever again. But people learn in different ways. And one of the challenges that we have is that a lot of courses are set in a particular way of, you might do some online pre-course work, you do some theory work, you attend and do the practical, and then you're assessed. And we talk about adult environments, but what about people who have different learning styles? It might be a little bit of a challenge for them to get their head around some concepts. So if they're coming into a course that's set in a particular way, then it shouldn't be the be all and end all, and it shouldn't be that hard on them. And we do take it quite easy with our volunteers, because they're coming in off the street with not necessarily any rescue experience, but they may have other life experience, which is essential. So we like to put them at ease, knowing that this is very new. Be easy on yourself. And then if you're deemed not yet competent, we'll still have other opportunities so that you can get there. And the big one is that there's no surprises. For myself, I do a lot of study, and I've been through assessments where the trainer will pop up and go, aha, you've forgotten this particular little thing. And you can see that they've been waiting so long just to spring it on you, but there's no value in that. It doesn't help learners along the journey. So when it comes to no surprises, for me, it's all about letting the learner know what is required in order to be deemed competent. There shouldn't be any surprises. There's a benchmark, they should know what it is. So to give you a little bit of an example of how we operate and showing learners the whole picture of what they need to do to be deemed competent, we've got our SES Rescue First Aid course here. So our course is similar, just like other RTOs, where you deal with your asthma and anaphylaxis and CPR, but we also throw in some extra skills like taking a basic set of vital observations, using a bag valve mask, applying a tourniquet, using splints, and so on, to give it that rescue flavor, because we do have volunteers who may need to wait 40 minutes, an hour, 3 hours for the nearest ambulance or remote area nurse to get to them. So we've put a little bit of a spin on your classic course. It still meets your standard provide first aid course at the moment with the 3 units of competency. Most people have done a first aid course at some point in their life, and so they have an idea of what it involves. However, we still like to give them all the information. So before a volunteer attends the course, if they want to find out what it's about, well, we have a course guide, which has got all our courses listed in it, prerequisites, how long does it go for, what's the delivery method, what is some of the content that might be covered. So it's a little bit of an idea of what's required. Now, this is really important for people who may have physical ailments. So if they think, wow, this USAR course sounds really great, but I've got a couple of rickety knees, Well, they can have a look through the guide and it says, well, you know, part of the activities and assessment you're going to be doing is crawling over a rubble pile that's going to be really uncomfortable. Well, at least they can decide at that point whether it's going to be right for them. So the course guide does help in that regard. Moving on from there, the next document that we've got is assessment information. Now, I'm a fan of being upfront with learners as to what is required. Again, set the benchmark. They either meet it or they don't. And so this assessment information goes into a little bit more depth and detail about the assessments within the course. And each course has this document. So if you're unable to read it on your screens because it might be in fine print, this one's talking about some individual skills where you need to be able to do some bandaging, administer an EpiPen, and so on. So it actually lists what you need to be able to do. Then we get into the joining instructions. So our volunteer says, yeah, this course sounds great. I want to attend it. Here's my nomination or my application form for this particular course. It gets accepted, and then we send out the joining instructions, which here it gives you a bit of an idea that it gives an overview of the course, a map of the location, what do you need to wear, what time do you need to attend, and so on. So that gives a little bit of an idea for the course. But then the important part pops up with course physical requirements. So first aid needs to be performed on the floor. If you are uncomfortable with this, or if you don't think it's quite for you, let the session coordinator know prior to the course. Same with the written. So we have learners with LLM difficulties. Let us know. We can make reasonable adjustment or we can work around it. But let us know. Again, for our learners, this gives them the idea that these are the kind of assessments that they'll be facing. On the day, first thing in the morning, give a bit of an introduction, show them where the exits are, and talk about the assessment requirements. So again, for us, letting them know exactly what the benchmark is. And we'll go through this verbally in some more detail. So again, talking about being on the floor with CPR, we can place padding under the knees, but it gives the learner the opportunity to say, hey, I can't quite do this right now. I've just had a knee reconstruction. I'll come back in 6 months. Thank you very much. Again, being upfront. To assist with all of that comes into our assessment requirements. So part of having those tough conversations comes into trainers being unfair or trainers making up requirements. So for us with our assessment instruments, we'll go in and we'll actually put dot points under each criteria to show exactly what they are assessing against. So that way it's very clean cut, very black and white as to what needs to be met. So here for CPR, it's fairly simple, put on a defibrillator and press the button. But in order to be deemed competent, pads need to be in the right place and shocks need to be delivered. Now, if you're a trainer in first aid, you might think, well, you're not a good trainer if you're not already looking at that kind of stuff. But when it comes to ASQA, and we've had an experience with a desktop audit where they had a look at some of our documents and they said, well, here you're saying on your observation sheet that you need to tie a particular knot correctly. Sure. Define correctly. And so that's where putting in these extra dot points of exactly what you're looking for help to spell that out for anyone who picks up the assessment instrument, whether they're an experienced trainer or they're new to the game. They know exactly what they're looking for. There's no misinterpretation because it's spelled out in front of them. Simple things again, with the trauma, putting on a bandage, it's fairly simple stuff. I'm sure you've all been through multiple first aid courses in your careers, but again, it's still spelling it out as to exactly what is required, making sure that it's nice and smooth, it's tucked away, it's not falling apart. Might seem obvious, but again, when it comes to the assessment, I personally don't have any issue with giving observation sheets to the learner and saying, this is what you need to meet in order to be deemed competent. Some might say, well, that's giving them a bit of a head start, but at the end of the day, there's a difference between reading it and being able to perform it. And at least if they're able to see what they need to do to be deemed competent, then they might have a chance of achieving it then and there. Now, following on from there, when it comes into the knowledge assessments, we make everything crystal clear as to what they need to do. Again, no surprises. You may have experienced in your time of completing a multiple choice question, and you circle one answer and the trainer pops up and goes, that was a trick question. We don't have that. It doesn't benefit anyone in our view. So here we've actually got instructions for completing a multiple choice and a written answer assessment. Even down to the fact of, in the middle, you've got circle the correct answer and then circle the correct answers, just making it quite clear that there are multiple answers there. Again, there's no point trying to trick people. We're enterprise RTOs. We're not taking the money from random people off the street, giving them a qualification, and we don't care what happens to them afterwards. We're training our own people. So there's no point being difficult on them or providing trick questions or getting them to doubt the answers that they've provided. So we've gone through all of that so far of the assessment information. We've got our course guide. We've got the assessment instructions, the joining instructions. We've told them exactly what they need to do and what they need to do to be deemed competent, but they're still not yet competent. Something's gone wrong along the lines. Now, where that makes life easy for us is we have an action plan. This is a very basic form that's getting a little bit jazzed up at the moment, but the whole idea is to take the particular elements where the learner has been deemed not yet competent, letting them know exactly what they need to recomplete in order to be deemed competent. So we'll put in there with the action plan about what needs to be done, who's going to do it, and how long they're going to have to sit that reassessment. And quite often that'll be done at the local level. So they won't have to reattend the next course on another weekend. It'll just be done locally, usually one-on-one with the assessor. They're deemed competent if they are deemed competent, and away they go. They get the unit of competency. So they get a reattempt. So typically they have 2 attempts at completing the course. And with this documentation, we need to decide how much of the course needs to be redone. So if they've been deemed not yet competent at tying one particular knot out of a stand of tying 10 knots, then that's it. That's all they need to do is the one. But there might be a component of a scenario that they've been deemed not yet competent in, which means that they may need to complete that whole scenario at a whole another course, but just that component. And I'm sure you folks might have something similar where you could have a basic skill that you could be deemed competent in and be reassessed in. But if you're swimming for 200 meters, grabbing a person and swimming 200 meters back, well, if they're not too good at grabbing the person, well, they might need to redo the whole assessment rather than just that particular component because it's not feasible or it's not within the context. Now, what if they're still not yet competent? Now, a lot of the skills that we are giving to our volunteers, particularly early on in their career, can be technical. People are tying knots, they're using ropes, they're using equipment that they've never used before. So it'd be understandable if they're not yet competent in those particular skills. But what if they completely just don't understand the material or they're just not getting the course? Well, for us, we like to do a lot of reflection. Why are they still not yet competent? So it might be an issue that they've been trained at their local unit, so they've got the prerequisite training, and then they've come to an assessment only weekend. They've been trained by one person who may have lost their skill or knowledge over time or just thought of a different way of doing it. And then they've come to the assessment weekend with a different assessor who is doing it by the book, and they've been not yet competent through really no fault of the learner. And that's an issue that we need to work through. Other points, is the learner suited for the role? So again, if we've got someone who's just had a knee reconstruction wanting to attend a USAR course and climb over rubble, but they're just not physically capable of doing it, is there any point in trying to prolong that pain by getting them to reattend and reattend and reattend? They may be suited for other roles, and that's really an honesty chat with them of, are you sure this is right for you? We certainly have lots of other roles that you'd be suited for. Can we perform any reasonable adjustment that would work for them but not disadvantage our other learners. And if all else fails, if they've got a lot of the course that they're just deemed not yet competent in, do they need to resit the entire thing? Do they need to spend more time at their local unit one-on-one, working through the material with someone, a bit of a buddy system? Or should they just attend multiple courses? Again, people learn at their own pace and they learn in their own time. Let's see what works for them. Again, the end of the day, we're training our own people to go off and do these jobs. We need to look after them. So for us, the hard conversations aren't really that hard when we've set up a bit of a pathway to give our volunteers all the information necessary to be deemed competent for the assessment. And when those conversations do pop up, a lot of the time it goes quite well, because we don't have the feedback of the trainer was hard on me, the trainer was unfair, because we've been crystal clear and upfront from the get-go as to what's required. So quite often we're showing the volunteers that this is the pathway to be deemed competent, and they're quite happy with that. They'll happily wear, yes, I didn't get that knot right, I'll see you in 2 weeks and I'll prepare for it then. But then we have the really tough conversations. So the learner has been deemed competent, they have met the assessment requirements, but they're not suitable to perform that role. So for us, we've got our unit of competency, which is drive vehicles under operational conditions. And so in the early days of rolling out this course, we would have some issues with it. So this course is all about driving an SES vehicle under priority 1, so the lights and sirens, driving that little bit over the speed limit on the wrong side of the road. So obviously a high risk course. So we would have volunteers attend the course and they would sit through the theory, they would go through their driving assessments, and they'd be perfect. So they would be sitting there, 2 hands on the wheel, driving along, doing exactly what's required of them. Great, deemed competent, you've met all the assessment requirements. Then we would get a phone call from someone at their unit. So the person's been deemed competent, they get their certificate, they go back to the unit and they say, yes, I can now drive operationally. And the person at the unit would say, no, because the majority of people who drive with you look like this passenger. And so they might send the volunteer along to the course, hoping that the assessor would deem them not yet competent, because they didn't want to have that hard conversation at the unit level. But for us, they've come along, they've shown that they have the skills, they've shown that they have the knowledge, and they've shown that they can drive safely. So they've met all the requirements. So from the training perspective, they've done everything right. When it comes down to the unit level, the unit might not be happy with that person being a driver because they might be a little bit erratic. They drive their own personal vehicles like it's a race car. People might just be scared of being in the vehicle with that person. So for us, this is a different issue in itself. So this moves away from being a training issue and becomes more about performance management of the person not doing the right thing when they're either in the vehicles, or the perceptions that people have about the way that they drive. So for SES, the way that we've worked into this is to have roles. So roles and role descriptions are basically like a job description of a particular SES role. So some of them are automatic, particularly the basic courses or the lower level courses. Volunteers automatically get that role when they complete a course. So when you complete a drive vehicles operationally course, then you become a driver. If you complete a rescue operations course, a first aid course, and your basic induction, then you can become a rescuer. So some of those roles are automatically given to volunteers. Some of the more technical roles, or the high risk, like your swift water technician, vertical technician, and so on, need to be applied for through the process. And so that makes sure that we've got the right people performing the right roles, in addition to pre-selection and tryouts and applications. Now with the roles, they can be revoked. So if we've got someone who is not driving safely, well, we're not going to make them a driver anymore. That role is revoked. Don't have the role, then you're not a driver or you don't perform any other role, which means that the volunteer could still attend the course and get the unit of competency so they can get their certificate 2 or their cert 3, particularly if it's a core unit. We still want them to have that achievement, but it means that they don't perform that role until they either approved or they change behaviors or do something different, which again, through performance management would need to be managed that way. So that's the tough conversations, different beast. But as for the hard conversations, for us, they don't need to be hard. So if we're communicating the benchmarks early, make everything nice and clear, we've got no surprises, and we make sure that the learner knows that the assessment is part of the process. It's not the end. So it takes away the apprehension of, well, if I'm deemed not yet competent, can I really show my face again because I'm going to be ashamed of not being competent? It's not what we want. What we need people to understand is that with a lot of courses and a lot of qualifications, they're really an induction, a white card to being able to perform the role. You know, the journey doesn't end with the assessment. It's really the starting point to move forward and refine the skills and knowledge that you've now received. For us, the action plan is essential. Again, clear communication, letting them know exactly what they need to do to be deemed competent, the steps that will be taken, who's going to help, and when is it going to be achieved by. So that's the hard conversations for us and a lot of information for you folks. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Jayme, how would you handle one of the actual scenarios we have is that one of our requirements for our assessment is they should know the phonetic alphabet for radio. We don't physically use that very much on radio, but it's actually a requirement for the assessment. So does that become you must know everything for that award, for that, or you just know a reasonable amount of it to pass?
Well, I guess that comes down to the unit of competency, and without having that in front of me, if it says that they need to know the phonetic alphabet, then unit of competency is really the be all and end all. I guess what it comes down to there is you could, if you wanted to, in a sneaky way, and I hope I'm not landing anyone in any hot water, change the focus on, is that really important? Because the unit of competency says it, so that is important there, but organizationally, is it important? So how much of a focus do you put on the assessment? Do you stand everyone up and take them into a quiet room and say, right, A to Z, tell me the phonetic alphabet? Or do you make the assessment portion of it easier in order to get the unit of competency? Because operationally or for the organization, if someone says A for apple rather than alpha, is anyone going to die from that?
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on your focus as to what you want to achieve from it. If you want to be a very strict down the line, you must know your phonetic, then obviously that's pretty clean cut.
Okay, thank you.
Jayme, do you have a Cert 4 level?
We do. We have a Cert 4 in Public Safety, SES Leadership. So that's one that's still in development at the moment, but we're just tidying that one up to be released in due course.
Who assesses your awards now?
The awards?
Yeah, you know, all these people are being assessed. Who does the actual assessments?
Okay, so we've got our trainers or trainer and assessor, the different roles. They're conducted by both staff and volunteers. So we have volunteers who want to take up a training role, then we've started to work with them to get their skill set. So the 2 units of competency for the trainer presenter skills, and then they move up to the complete 4 units for the enterprise skill set. And then down the track, if they want to, then they can proceed to their full Cert 4. So by being enterprise RTO, we can have trainers and assessors under supervision with just the skill set, the 4 units of competency.
Jayme, I'm interested in your area where you were saying somebody's competent, but a role has been revoked. What rights does the person have for appeal? Like, is it a case of a person, if they think it's a case of a personality clash or group dynamics that's been the reason why they're being withheld?
Yeah, so it's not something that happens lightly. So for us, our organisational structure is you've got your unit members, and then you've got rank positions right through to deputy unit manager at their individual unit. And then we've got a district officer, like an area manager, regional commander, and then we go right up through to the chief officer. So by all means, if someone wants to appeal a decision, then just like any other RTO, they've got the right to appeal that decision. But when it comes into revoking a role, that's more the performance management side of it. So generally there'll be an investigation conducted, both sides of the story, and then recommendations put forward from there. So we don't make those snap decisions of, yes, you're not going to be able to perform this particular role. It'll actually go through quite a thorough process. And
I'm assuming there's like allowances for remedial action to be taken if it's like, I guess, much the same as a disciplinary action.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, SURF, SES are the same, where we want to have volunteers trained up to perform skills. So if we've got someone who, say, someone complains that they're driving in an unsafe manner, so not breaking road rules or doing anything too drastic, maybe they're just taking the corners a little bit too hard, then we'll talk to them and say, hey, you know what, do you want to take it easy with your driving? Sure, no worries, I can do that. No further issue? Then there's no further issue. They continue to do that, then going down that pathway. So it's not snap decisions. We'd like to work with people, help them develop, help them grow. Again, taking people in off the street who haven't worked in emergency services, giving them the skills. Sometimes you've got to mold them into a particular way of working.
Jayme, I've got a question for you on curriculum.
Yes.
So obviously we have national curriculum, which is set across Australia around those competencies, and similar competencies to yours, but flavoured for surf lifesaving. So do you have the same curriculum set nationally for SES or rescue workers or whatever they are? And if you don't, like, do you do like the qualifications interchangeable interstate?
Yeah, absolutely. So our training comes under the public safety training package, which is the same thing that you folks come under as well. So we have the Certificate 2 in public safety, SES. I think you folks have Cert 2 in public safety, aquatic rescue, or similar words. Please amend it if wrong.
Right.
Hey, got one for tonight. So if we have a look at our Cert 2 and our Cert 3, if, say, I wanted to join SURF, I could have a look and I would have probably half the units of competency that you folks are offering. So, drive vehicles under operational conditions, provide first aid, they're part of your core and electives. Navigate to an incident, perform aquatic rescues and things like that. That's all part of the core and electives that we have access to because we're under the same public safety package.
Right. Because we have like a kind of classic scenario in South Australia with, say, IRB drivers where the curriculum states assessment criteria is that they must be able to competently rescue people in surf, and that's a key piece of criteria. And that yet operationally, a lot of our people probably couldn't do that now in the, after many years, even though they have yearly competencies, because they operate, in North Haven or Semaphore or somewhere like that where there is no surf. So it's always kind of an interesting quandary about, whether you have those hard conversations with people, especially at skills maintenance time. I always never know quite what to do in those cases because we don't assess them in the surf either for that skills competency.
Yeah, and that can be tough. I mean, I'm involved with Fire and Emergency Aviation Technical Advisory Committee, and we sit around and we look at units of competency and we review them and amend them, and then we put them out for consultation and get them republished. You folks will be familiar with first aid changing every few years. That's not me, by the way, but it's a similar process there. And it can be tough of trying to meet those criteria. We have the same thing in the SES of reading a unit of competency and trying to contextualize it to what we do. And my focus on the TAC is to try and get rid of some of those must have and must do and change it to may have or may include, so that way you can contextualize it to your organizations. Otherwise it becomes near impossible. We've had some in the past. We'll take, for example, our storm and water damage course. So laying sandbags, putting tarp over a roof so the rain doesn't get in, and then rescue someone. So it doesn't add up. So when we're running a course, and part of the development, we've got to think of ways to incorporate all this stuff in there. So in our courses, it's, let's lay some sandbags, let's set up a bit of a dam to collect the water. Oh, and then one of your team members drops, okay, pick them up and put them inside. Cool, you've just rescued someone. All right, now let's get back to what we're actually here for and board up some windows. So the units of competency, they're great for being nationally accredited and acknowledging that people have undertaken the training. Sometimes they're just not written well. And we've fought a lot to get some of the changes made with the recent public safety training package being updated. And some of the odd things have been taken out. Some of them are still in there and cause us grief. So it is a challenge. All right, if we're all happy, we'll dive into the next topic. So the next one we're looking at is the benefits of scenario-based training. Now, public safety, SES, SURF, we're all very practically based organisations, and particularly for us, that's where we want our people to effectively be trained. So rather than putting them into a classroom, let's put them out into the field. That's really what they signed up for. Big thing for me is having context. So scenario-based training, doing things practically, being out in the field needs to give our volunteers context. So we can teach them what to do, we can teach them how they'll do it, but the really important thing is the why. Why are they doing it? And providing that context or providing a story is going to go a long way to getting that information to sink in and assisting with the application of those particular skills or the bit of knowledge that we're giving to them. So for example, back in my day when I was a wee volunteer assisting with training at my local units, we would have new members come in off the street and we would teach them everything from how to put up a ladder right through to tying some knots. And so the way that it was done back then is, let's get everyone to stand in a circle, grab a piece of rope, and we'll teach you how to tie some knots. Now, for your assessment with your rescue operations course, you need to know how to tie the knot correctly, and you need to know what it's used for. So we'd have a group of people standing in a circle, tying knots, and they'd randomly be asked, what is this knot used for? And so we would have these brand new members just rattling off information such as, oh, well, this is an anchor knot and this is a midline knot. Okay, what's it used for? Oh, it goes on a roof safety system and is used to have some safety lines attached to it. Great, you know what you're talking about. They've never seen it in action. So we're training people to tie these knots and how to use them without actually seeing it in action. So they would rattle off the answer, yes, it's a midline knot and we use it for a roof safety system, but without actually seeing it. It meant nothing to them except for the fact of they needed to say what needed to be said. So my focus is on changing that to give them a practical application. We use PowerPoints in our presentation. I want to try and move away from that and give them a practical application for the skills. So an example of where I'm trying to get our trainers and assessors to think differently in how we run courses, whether it be the nationally accredited right through to the unit training skills maintenance conducted every week. Can we do things differently? Can we do it better? Can we move away from the old school ways of just using PowerPoint to get the message across? So here in front of you, we've got some of our trainer assessors, and this is at our community of practice. So where we get a whole bunch of our trainers and assessors from across the state together, and we run through some different topics. So not about the skill areas that they look after, like road crash or rescue operations, but more about the vocational sector and training and the compliance side of it. So these are very experienced people, and they've been around for quite some time. They know their stuff. So I decided to run a session on the most boring topic possible. So the dynamic risk assessment. So this is something that we drill into our volunteers from a very early age about conducting a risk assessment. Now, do you folks use like this particular system, or do you have your own style of risk assessment in SURF?
That looks essentially what we do, but laid out quite differently.
Okay, but similar
Yeah,
steps.
it's a risk assessment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we do it on a daily basis. We've been doing it since we were born. It's a risk assessment. This one's got an SES flavor on it. Personally, whoop-de-doo, it's a risk assessment. Okay, we're all adults. We've been doing it for a while. So this is normally a full-blown PowerPoint going through it in detail. Now, imagine being a new person sitting in a room, looking at a PowerPoint. You've just joined the organization because you want to get on the truck and you want to do all the fun stuff. You're in a room looking at PowerPoints. In my opinion, not overly exciting. And if I'm bored, I'm sure they're bored. So this was put up in front of all our trainer and assessors, and I ran it like it was a session for brand new people. And they were wondering what the hell I was on about. So here with our risk assessment, you've got your hazards, you've got the plan, what are the risks, can it be made safe, monitoring, rinse and repeat. So I decided to spice it up for them and to get them thinking about ways we can do it differently. So here we've got our risk assessment, and I started to run through it like I would a normal session. So what are the hazards? What is the plan? Are you bored yet? I am. Sick of looking at PowerPoints. So let's do it differently. So rather than just sitting there and looking at a PowerPoint of how to conduct a risk assessment, I walked out of the room and eventually got them to follow me because they were still wondering what I was on about. And we had a simple little scenario set up. So here we've got a car that's reversed over a person. Really not a good look when you've got it all badged up. But we've got some other hazards around it. So we've got the electrical cord, we've got some bits of tools and debris, and there's a gas cylinder under the back of it. But got them to walk around, point out the hazards, and then we spoke about, you know, what are we going to do to resolve this? And so then we turned that into a bit of a conversation of, you know, do we need to do things via PowerPoint, or can we take literally 5 minutes to set up a really small scenario in order to get that same message across? You know, it's going to have your volunteers more engaged. They're going to be up, they're going to be thinking, they're going to be switched on. They're not going to be falling asleep if we actually get them involved in it from the get-go. Still get the important message across. It's just we don't have to hammer in, you know, 50 PowerPoint slides in order to get that across to them. And so we're now going to follow that on with some more sessions of how we can change the courses that we deliver to make it more practically focused. So similar again, at my local unit, I rocked up one night half an hour late, and everyone was sitting around looking at a chainsaw maintenance DVD. Great, it's 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night. We're all volunteers, we've got places to be, but we're here watching a DVD. Why don't we stop that and actually set up some tables, put some chainsaws on there, and actually run through it? So for me, it's not just about maintaining chainsaws and cleaning them, but for new people, it's the small things, it's the basics. It's grabbing a chainsaw and just holding it, feeling the weight, knowing how it works. You know, push this lever, take this apart. Yeah, how does the chain run? It's all those small tactile things that are really important that you're not going to get from just watching a DVD, but you'll get that from picking it up, taking it apart. Challenge is just making sure that you've got clear communication when giving instructions to maintain and clean the chainsaws so that effectively the job gets done. Yeah, another example there of one thing I'm working on at the moment is with our Swiftwater technicians. So very experienced people, a lot of technical skills. Some of them have backgrounds working for SA Ambulance, for rescue training organizations and so on. And every 3 years, they've got to do a first aid course to stay current. It's a little bit of teaching them to suck eggs. So I'm one of the trainers for the course. If I find it boring, I'm sure they find it boring. So for me, I don't put them into a classroom and show them the videos and run through the activities in a classroom setting. I've basically thrown that out. I take my assessment tool of exactly what they need to know and what I need to observe, and I contextualize it to the water. So what I want is for the Swiftwater technicians to be in water and bandaging a person. I want them to be on their inflatable boat and performing CPR. So rather than just doing another stock standard first aid course, I want to spice it up by putting them into the environment in which they'll work to be able to be assessed. And effectively, it becomes an assessment only day because these folks do know their stuff, and there's no doubt about that. But it makes it a little bit more enjoyable rather than having 20 people falling asleep in a classroom. So that's where the scenario-based training and assessment does have its benefits. Put them into the environment in which they signed up to be in. Now, to take that another step further, each year the State Emergency Service, except for this year, thanks to COVID, hosts a state rescue challenge, and in the alternate year, a state training challenge. So the rescue challenge is a competition, training challenge is a learning opportunity. So we have teams from across the state come together at a different location that we've picked, and we've set up with a whole range of different scenarios. And they spend their weekend hopping from each scenario, completing and competing against each other in order to win that weekend when it's a rescue challenge. The training challenge, same thing, just without the competition flavor behind it. And so we've picked out some really good locations. We've used Amy Stadium before it was being knocked down. We used the former Royal Adelaide Hospital, again, before that was knocked down. And so we provide some really unique locations that they wouldn't get on a normal course, and they wouldn't get at their normal skills maintenance night at their unit. So here we've got at Amy Stadium, they're running through a scenario which they've got 45 minutes to try and complete. So it is quite time precious, but achievable. Former Royal Adelaide Hospital, just outside, another weekend again where we give them some great resources in order to provide those scenarios and to give them a bit of a challenge, which again, it's not rinse and repeating the course, it's building upon those skills. And then we throw in some really random stuff to see exactly how they'll react. So it's not exactly something they're trained for someone who slips off a toilet and fractures their wrist and needs help getting up. Or other people who have received some severe injuries. So we do try and challenge that critical thinking to get them operating in ways or environments that they might not exactly know what to do. Again, it's all about that growth. So for us, scenario-based training and assessment is really essential. It keeps our volunteers engaged, provides context or a story which assists with application. It's almost like a picture says 1,000 words. If we can get them doing it and they know exactly why they're doing it and they've got that context and they can put an application for the skill. So with those knots, rather than just standing in a circle tying knots, we'll put a tarp over a big trailer and say, right, now we're going to secure this tarp down. And we'll actually go through tying different knots on different sides. So it gives them more of an application that they can appreciate rather than standing in a room and talking about something. that they've never seen applied in the field. So it's all about going from the classroom, simulated environments. It doesn't have to be anything over the top, but what it means is that they're out, they're in the fresh air, and they're actually in the environments that they've signed up to be in. It's more engaging and interactive rather than looking at your PowerPoints or reading out of a book. Some people do prefer reading out of a book, and we have no issue with that. Again, it's different ways that people learn. Provides our volunteers with more time on the tools, and effectively it keeps them happy. It gives them more skill and knowledge rather than sitting on a chair and learning that way. Now, the last little bit here is if you're interested in particularly things with the state training challenge, state rescue challenge, or any of the other capabilities, if you hop onto Google and type in SES Flickr, it'll pop up with this account. You don't need to sign up for an account. You can just have a look, but it's got a lot of albums with different photos from different events, as well as some of the capabilities that we have, and we're updating that all the time with some snazzy pictures. So it gives you a bit of an idea, and maybe some other ideas of different assessments that or activities that could be conducted as well. So that's it from me in regards to those particular topics. Again, did anyone have any questions?
Jayme, with your trainers and assessors, are they all volunteers, or have you got any? Are they all active volunteers within your service?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix. So we do have a large volunteer pool, but then we also have staff members as well. So the district officer, so that area manager, their job is to look after HR and finance and a lot of the stuff at the unit level, so helping the volunteers there. But a big portion of that is also the training. So they'll conduct a lot of the training, and we'll also use volunteer trainers and assessors there. So they may be assisting the district officer, or our volunteers might be completely independent running a course on their own. So it does depend on the capability and where they are.
And like using your scenario with your chainsaw, so that group with the chainsaw, do you do that every 3 months, every 6 months, every 12 months, every 2 years? What's the proficiency like on that type of stuff for chainsaw maintenance?
Yeah, so generally you attend the course, complete the course, and then it'll be a case of going back to your unit to maintain the skills. So each unit will come up with their own training schedule, and so they'll build into their chainsaws, USAR, vertical, what have you. So that's how they maintain the skills, as well as going out on the job. So we might attend a job which is, it's trees fallen on someone's house, it's just knocked the gutter, it's not life-threatening, it hasn't caused any damage. We might go, well, this will actually be a training opportunity, so we'll take things a little bit slower than normal, and we'll actually use that for some maintenance. Tree across a main road, we'll chop that up as quickly as we can and clear that off for obvious reasons. So in addition to that, then we have the rescue challenge and the training challenges. So they're opportunities to get some further skills maintenance done there. In addition to, if a volunteer just wants to come back on a course, they might have been on holiday for 6 months, then by all means they can come back and do that as well. We are looking at implementing a skills maintenance program, which will mean every year or 2 years, you need to be proficient in XYZ particular skills. And that'll be the main important parts out of a particular course. So how do you folks operate at this stage? Obviously, you've got your beach patrols, you've got IRBs and so on. Do you have a set schedule each year of particular things they need to achieve?
No one else is going to answer. I'll answer. We have our skills maintenance proficiency, so we do that every year, and that covers off our main awards for bronze, our IRBs, our advanced resuscitation techniques, and things like that. We've also got other awards that we do skills maintenance for as well, but it's usually done on a yearly basis, just as the season starts or just before the season starts.
Okay. And so is there a great deal of work involved there, or is this something that they can knock off in a day? Or
It's not too much, and it's obviously weather dependent too, because obviously it involves for the water work, getting in the water. So we have to make sure that sometimes it's run. You might get the dry stuff done on one day, and then maybe come next week you'll go back and do the rest of the wet stuff. And it's dependent too on how many awards you hold and things like that. For example, CPR though crosses over a couple of awards. So therefore, if you do your skills maintenance at your bronze level, when you go to your ARTC, you don't need to do it there. So they're only doing it the once
Beautiful.
to save time. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Has anyone got any other questions? No.
Just one quick one. How many assessors or trainer assessors per volunteer do you have? Do you have any idea of those sort of numbers?
Depends on the course. So for myself, I run a first aid course. It'll just be me and a maximum of 12 generally on a course. But then as you get into the more high risk courses, so for chainsaw, you'll be looking at one trainer per, I think it's 2 learners. And so that's really just to keep that supervision. Obviously with spinning chains and whatnot can end badly. Vertical rescue, very similar there, where the ratios are quite small, so you've got that one-on-one contact in those high risk environments.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else got any questions? No? Okay, that looks like no one's got any other questions. So we have hit 7:30, so we're right on time, so that's good. Thank you, Jayme. Thank you for that. That was really good, and hopefully everyone took something away from that. It is really interesting to sort of see how other organisations with volunteers do what they do, which is similar to us. So, yeah. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's been good.
Yeah. All right. Now, definitely no one's got any questions. This is your moment. No. Okay. Well, I guess 7:30, and that's it. We're done. So thank you very much, everyone. That was actually the last session for our conference. So we've had the 4, and tonight was the last one. So you now have your Tuesdays and your Saturdays back again. So thank you very much all for your support as well. It has been great to see such a very big attendance for each session. So thank you very much. All right. So bye. You can all go.
Thanks, Kate.
See you.
Bye.
All right, thanks, folks.
Bye. This is where all the screen just gets smaller and smaller.
Great one, Kate. Kate, I thought we were doing the IRB skills update.
This was it. So I don't know if you attended on Tuesday when we sort of had our PD session about the PD. So this is what we've done. There's been no changes for IRBs. So there's no point pulling you guys in to talk about something you already know. So this is in replace of that and saves you coming in for nothing, really.
Good one.
Because nothing's changed.
Right. Okay, good one. No, this was excellent.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thanks very much.
No worries. Thank you.